welcome to Lunch with Lake Ridge. Today, our 2025 Nominating Committee will interview one of our board members, our treasurer, Mr. Bill Milne, to give you an idea to acquaint you with what it's like to be a board member and what one might expect. We're hoping that our residents who are candidates this year will find this informative, and we also hope that maybe some of the residents who see this might choose to run for board of directors next year. So if I may introduce our nominating committee, Michelle Basham is here on our right, and Martha Nelson, and I, Janet Foote. Martha has been our past assistant GM. Michelle is on our board, and I'm on our board. Today, Bill has agreed to be interviewed, and we will start with Martha.
Good morning, Bill, and thank you for being here. What brought you to Lake Ridge, and how long have you lived here?
Well, thank you for having me here. So this started out quite a few years ago when we have family relatives who lived here in Lake Ridge. And in fact, my now son-in-law was a high school graduate at Woodbridge High School. And so when we came back into the area in 2003, so we've been here 21 years, when we came back in the area in 2023, we moved into the Lake Ridge area. And more recently, in 2015, we moved into the actual LRPRA association. Before we were in another HOA, but in Lake Ridge. And so we've been fortunate to live in this beautiful place for as long as we have, these 21 years, in and out with military assignments. But not only is we have some family, but all of our grandkids are here, all 13 of them. And we are blessed to have our son and his wife and 7 kids live 2 blocks from us, and our daughter and our son-in-law live on the same street. So all of us are part of the LRPRA. So it's been a great ride being here 21 years. We hope to be here quite a few more years. But as you all know, when grandkids grow up and get married, they have a tendency to move out. So we've already had our first one leave the area.
And how long have you lived here, Bill?
We have lived here since 2003, 21 years, a little over 21 years.
And what motivated you to run for the board?
Well, that's a good question. So growing up as a young kid, we lived pretty much, I won't say in poverty, but we lived in a place where we were underprivileged. And so as I got older, I realized that giving back to the community, giving back to people was important. So at 18, I entered the military. So I served my country for 38 and a half years. When I retired, we came here and I worked for Mike May. I volunteered for him in the community, and I worked on the social services board. And then when Ruth became the supervisor, she had appointed me to the planning commission. So now I had not only service to my country, but now I had service to the county. And I had spent 6 years on the board, or on the planning commission, last 3 as chair. And when I resigned from there, I ended up working in our community, first on the architectural committee for a couple years. And then I was asked to run for the board by Janet, of all people, and Janet and Ron. And so and I was fortunate to be elected. And so I've been on the board now for 4 years. I'm finishing up my 4th year on the board. And so it's not just service to my country, service to my county and community, but it's also a beautiful area. It's a beautiful place. And so I wanted to have some thought and input as to what this would look like as the future grew on. And I think part of it is being on the planning commission, I had this benefit of watching empty buildings over here in our commercial areas and said, okay, well, how can we fix that? So that was sort of a little bit of an emphasis when Janet asked us, how can I help with that process and stuff? So that's why I'm here.
Has serving on the board met your expectations?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think I came with expectations. I think I came with an open mind as to what I could do. But very quickly you realize the things that you can do based on the skill sets you have. As an example, so our board members are a very diverse group. They all have different skill sets. And the skill sets vary from those who've been in the contracting business working for the government. We have several military folks. We have folks in the private sector now. I personally worked on Capitol Hill for 3 years. I used that experience on the Planning Commission and here. And there are people with financial experience. I think there are people who have loved the outdoors and understand the trails and what goes into that. We have a board member who's very much into invasive species. So I think the diverse group of board members is very intriguing to me, and it's a great relationship.
And Bill, what has been the most fulfilling aspect of serving on the board?
Oh boy, I think the collaboration. Collaboration with my peers. It is no different really at the board here at the HOA, other than the fact that you're now all volunteers. Unlike the military or working for the county, where your peers, it's a very collaborative process in making decisions, but on the board it's a little bit different because everybody brings something to the table. And so the collaborative process, the diversity of thought, not only just from the board, but also from the staff. And it has been rewarding in that sense that just to get to hear and see and what people think, especially those who've lived here much longer in the community than I have.
Thank you, Martha. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Michelle.
My question for you is, how has your perception of Lake Ridge and of homeowners associations changed at all since you joined the board?
Well, I think before I was in the Lake Ridge's HOA, I was president of another HOA right on the backside of this one, which is called the Amisal HOA and stuff. So the perception here is things are a little bit more political, just to be fair. There is a lot more input. There's a lot of people. I mean, we have nearly 7,300 homes, and I would venture to say that represents about the interest of maybe 25, 30,000 people. And so the grander scale of this is very unique, and it has been a good challenge for me to just navigate through what it is people want and need. And sometimes the challenge is when you listen to your board members, you have to really dig into, understand where they're coming from and stuff. So I think that's been one of the perceptions is I didn't come in with a perception of what it should be. I brought an experience that I had from another HOA as the president and as the treasurer and then on the architectural committee. So here I am filling those same roles at a much larger and a more beautiful HOA, which is really more controlled by staff and by 9 board members.
Will you tell us about any challenges that you expect any new board members to face, and how could they possibly prepare for them?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people feel or react to when they first become a board member of any organization is what is the role they're filling, but also, especially here in the HOA, is the risk. We, as 9 members of the board, have to understand the risks associated with this large association. You're in the public domain, meaning these are public streets. You have homes, you have people with challenges that we may or may not see. We have commercial businesses, we have parking. All of these things come with a risk. And yes, we have insurance to cover a lot of those things, but I think navigating the risks and sharing the risks with the different board members and getting their perspective on how do we deal with the risks is probably one of the biggest things that they can prepare for. So.
And how has serving on the LRPRA board contributed to your professional life?
Oh, again, that's another hard one to say because most people bring, especially living here in Lake Ridge, living in, I'll call it the metropolitan DC area, this large area, most people that are here as either homeowners or renters have jobs in DC or in the local area where they have leadership skills. And so they bring those to here. So for myself, military experience, commanding ships, commanding shore units, working on Capitol Hill, all of those things contribute to your professional life. So I personally brought those to here. And then, as Janet knows, working on the Planning Commission, where you have pretty big say in things that get developed here in Prince William County, that also has a tendency to contribute to your professional life. So I probably brought more than I acquired, but listening to my peers in the communities, you know, that they served in their professional careers has been very enhanceful. And it started when I was on the architectural committee, you know, with the chair then, who had his personal experiences. So you learn a lot. You learn a lot as a board member, and I think that's key.
Well, let me turn it over to Janet. I know she has a few questions for you.
So Bill,
Yes.
how were you welcomed to the board for your first term, and how were you oriented to the board?
Okay, so as you know, I was on the architectural committee, so the first welcoming thought was simply somebody reaching out to me and saying, hey Bill, would you be interested in running for the board? I said, okay, sure, yeah, I'll do that. So once the election process had been completed, and I was fortunate enough to be elected to the board, then I was given an opportunity to meet, not with the GM necessarily, but some of the directors, and get the drive around Lake Ridge. And that takes a while because this is not a small HOA. And so once that had been accomplished, then I was able to ask questions of the directors in their particular, you know, piece of the puzzle, and in the office and stuff. So I met with Brody, and I met with Mark, and again the old finance director. So I was able to get a good feel for all of the directors, and then I had a little bit of time with the GM. Once that was completed, and I was at my first board meeting, I get handed this big red book. Here you go, Bill. This is your life history. Learn it all really quick. And I think that was the next part. But I think one of the beneficial things was during the first meeting, which was right after the annual meeting, we had an attorney here who was providing, you know, went through the annual attorney speak about things you can do, you should do, your responsibilities, what you shouldn't do, and stuff. So that was kind of the beginning salvo of my time being acclimated to the board.
So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because oftentimes new board members are afraid that they won't get a proper orientation, and we hope to make that better every year. So your experience will add to that reservoir of experience. So is there anything that you would like to say to our candidates? We have 7 candidates for 2025.
Wow, very nice.
Or for any people who may be thinking about becoming a board member in the future, because that's their objective, is to make people understand it's not so daunting, but that they would want to serve their community.
Yeah, I would start out with people should really want to be involved in the community. Let's start with that, and it can be at any level. Yes, board members are, I guess, would be considered the highest position you could obtain, but there are there's the finance committee, there's the architectural committee, there's the trails committee. There are many committees, especially given our size, that need to be and to help out run the association. So the skill sets I brought to the board, as we talked about different diverse things, I have a financial background. So as some of you have seen, I spend a lot of time on the finances. If someone has a skill set in any kind of financial realm, whether it's budgeting in the government, or it's here, or it's there, AP, AR, all of those things, that's a highly desired skill set on the board. And I think that now, we haven't focused so much on investments, which is different than budgets. But investments is another thing that I personally bring to the board. I spent a lot of time investing, and as hopefully the owners are aware, that we have done pretty well with changing our investments over the last couple of years. So if you have an investment background, that said, it's a diverse board. We need something of everything. Like I said, we have somebody who's very skilled at budgets, very skilled at contracting. We have people, some IT folks, board members with some IT experience. I think we might have had one realtor at one time, I think. So every skill set that somebody has is important to the board and the LRPRA.
So in closing, I just want to say how much we appreciate your taking this interview today, Bill. And I want to thank all of the 7 candidates who are running this year for the 2025 Board of Directors. But I also want to encourage all of our residents to consider running in the future. As Bill pointed out, in the metropolitan area, DC metropolitan area, we have a tremendous wealth of talent right here in LRPRA. So even if you can't give full time to being a board member, which meets once every other month, perhaps you will give us some of that skill set, and maybe you'll get to meet some new people, and you will feel a sense of commitment to the community. So on behalf of Lake Ridge, Lunch for Lake Ridge, I hope that you enjoyed this session and that you will be inspired to run for some of these offices on the board of director or for the committees in the future. Thank you.